One false headline accused Jewish residents of burning dozens of Palestinian-owned sheep in a suspected settler attack, and the outrage spread instantly. Hours later, police clarified the story, but by then, the narrative was already locked in. How does disinformation so quickly spread before the truth has a chance to catch up? We're setting the story straight on Judeacation. Welcome back to Judeacation here on JNS TV. My name is Josh Haston, correspondent for JNS News, and let me tell you how the demonization of Jewish residents of Judea and Samaria works. I want to explain. On Tuesday, I got the following phone notification from a news source. Dozens of sheep burned to death in suspected settler attack in West Bank. Now that's the phone notification. If you click on the link provided, it has the same headline and adds at the bottom, police probing if electrical fault to blame. But that part about a possible electrical fault wasn't in the notification blast. Now let's give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there weren't enough characters to include that last part about a possible electrical fault. And let's give the benefit of the doubt for saying the words suspected attack. But let's move on to the article itself. Dozens of sheep were burned to death in an overnight arson attack carried out by Israeli settler extremists in the southern West Bank, Palestinian media reports. This doesn't say suspected attack, it quotes so-called Palestinian media as fact. At least it admits it's not Israeli media, which might make someone pause, but nevertheless, Palestinian media is quoted. But does the average person looking for news take the time to say, wait, maybe this did happen, or maybe it didn't? I would guess most people who took the time to click on the article believe that this is what happened. Jews killed Arab-owned sheep. They burned them alive. The article then says Israeli security forces are heading to the village of As-Samu near Hebron to investigate the incident. Graphic footage from the aftermath shows the burned corpses of the animals. Only after all of that does the article say detectives from the Hebron police station have arrived at the scene and begun investigating the circumstances of the incident. Police add the officers are checking whether the fire is a result of an arson attack or electrical short circuit. So far, does anyone really know for sure what happened? Of course not. But it was much easier to blame the settlers from the very beginning, from the notification and from the first paragraph in the article. And that is the sick and sad reality. That is why the demonization happens. It's so simple to explain based on one random headline, one article, one random day this week. So what really happened in this incident of the dead sheep? Later on, the news source added, update. Police later say the fire was caused by an electrical fault. And later on, a new notification was sent out clarifying what happened. But if you ask me, the damage was done. The demonization was done. Here's what the Israel police said. Update. Barn fire in Samu. Earlier today, investigators from the Judea and Samaria Forensics Unit and fire investigators, along with rescue services, examined the scene. The investigation determined that the fire was caused by an electrical malfunction, which ignited sheets covering the barn, leading to the burning of the animals. Tragically, the fire resulted in the death of these animals. Based on the investigation, the assessment indicates this is not a criminal or nationalist-motivated act. Jews did not kill Arab sheep. The PA News lied about it. The media, sadly, an Israeli media outlet in this case, ran with it, and we have the demonization. This is irresponsible reporting. It's bad enough when the international press goes after the residents of Judea and Samaria. It stings even more when the local press does the same. But now you understand how this campaign of demonization is carried out. The 2026 JNS International Policy Summit will take place April 15th to the 17th at the Waldorf Astoria in Jerusalem. Register today at jns-summit.org and use the coupon code JNSTV, that is JNSTV, one word, to receive 20% off all tickets. I look forward to seeing you in Jerusalem. Moving on, here is some great news this week. The Jewish population in Judea and Samaria grew in 2025 at twice the rate of Israel's overall population, according to a report compiled by former lawmaker Yaakov Ketzela and first shared with JNS this past Friday. As of January 1st, 2026, 541,085 Jews live in Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, accounting to some 5.2% of the total population of the Jewish state, according to what is called the West Bank Jewish Population Stats Report. The population grew by 2.2% last year, exactly double the 1.1% growth rate of the nation's overall population. That figure, culled from Interior Ministry statistics, does not include the some 340,000 Jews living in the eastern neighborhoods of Jerusalem, which of course the PA claim, despite it being part of Israel's capital. So this is extremely positive news. The Jewish population in Judea and Samaria is growing. Moving on, a PA Arab convicted of terrorism and released to the Gaza Strip in 2011 in the Gilad Shalit prisoner swap was arrested last week at a mall in the central Israeli city of Kfar Saba, according to indictments filed on Tuesday. It was not immediately clear when Mohammed Abu Ataya, convicted of attempted murder, planting explosives, arms trafficking, and membership in a terrorist organization, entered Israel from Gaza. According to Israel's Channel 14, Abu Ataya was rearrested after a security guard grew suspicious when he repeatedly tried to enter Kfar Saba's G-Mall, including using a fake Israeli ID. Police were called and the suspect was detained after a brief chase. The Israel police superintendent from Kfar Saba told the Hebrew language outlet Channel 14, "From our perspective, he is a terrorist in every respect, and an attack was prevented here." On Tuesday, charges were filed against the would-be terrorists and a Kfar Saba resident in his 50s as well, who allegedly drove him to the mall. Police say at the conclusion of a comprehensive investigation, serious charges were filed against the suspects, along with a request to extend their detention until the end of the legal proceedings. The Israel police will show zero tolerance toward anyone who violates the law and may endanger public security, particularly during a wartime, and will continue to act decisively with an emphasis on offensive involving transporting, harboring, and employing infiltrators, a statement said from the police. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich on December 29th called for upping enforcement actions against Israelis who employ Palestinians illegally. Smotrich spoke 3 days after a PA terrorist murdered 2 Israeli civilians and wounded 2 others in a series of attacks in and around the northern city of Beit Shean. "Do not employ illegal residents," he said. "This is the murder of Jews." So what happened here? A convicted terrorist with a fake ID who was released in a prisoner exchange is in Israel proper illegally and tries to go into a mall. According to the report, it doesn't say exactly what his intentions were, but as the police said, from our perspective, he is a terrorist in every respect, and an attack was prevented here. And that is the attitude we need to have, folks. Last week, we showed a video of PA Arabs going over the top of the security barrier entering into pre-1967 Israel. Were they looking for work or were they looking to murder? Who wants to take a chance with their family and pretend it's probably only for work? As I said, what starts with illegal entry for work ends in terrorism, and that is the attitude we all need to have. The security forces are doing a great job, but from a mentality perspective, we have to realize the security fence doesn't keep the bad guys away. It doesn't keep them out. Fences and walls failed on October the 7th, and counting on them can, God forbid, be a failure in the rest of the country. Moving on, if you want to understand who some of our neighbors are, pay close attention to the following report. This is a joint statement by the Israel police spokesman and the IDF spokesperson. In 2 operations in the city of Jericho, security forces arrested an ISIS terrorist cell suspecting of planning an attack. You remember how the Israel haters claim that there are no terrorists in Judea and Samaria. Usually they talk about Hamas and they say Hamas doesn't exist outside of Gaza. Well, the same haters will claim ISIS doesn't exist either. You remember ISIS, right? The folks that burn people alive, drown Yazidis in cages. Well, unfortunately, they are still out there. Under the direction of the Israel Security Agency, undercover border police officers from the Jerusalem unit and IDF forces operated in recent weeks to apprehend a terror cell affiliated with the ISIS terror organization. The suspects were advancing terrorist activity and were allegedly planning to carry out a massive attack. Last week, soldiers from the Lions of the Jordan Valley Battalion arrested 3 members of the cell in the city of Jericho. That's within the Jordan Valley. This activity follows an additional operation carried out during which undercover officers from the Jerusalem Border Police Unit, acting on Shin Bet intelligence, operated in Jericho and arrested another member of the cell. The arrested suspects were transferred to the Shin Bet for further investigation. Security forces will continue to operate both defensively and offensively to safeguard the security of residents of Israel. That's what the statement said. Hamas, ISIS, the PA groups, folks, these are active terrorist organizations operating in our midst. Thank God this ISIS attack was thwarted just in time. And here are details on another anti-terror operation, according to a police spokesperson. Border Police, Judea and Samaria District Police, and IDF soldiers raided the village of Azun as part of large-scale anti-terror operations. Now, I know the village of Azun well. That's in Samaria. I have family in the area. Folks, it's simply a nasty, nasty place. It is a hornet's nest of terrorism and terrorist activity. They've been attacking Jews on the roads for years from that village. In fact, Israel has put up fencing in recent years to try and keep these folks away from the highway up there. That's Route 55, which is a major east-west thoroughfare in the area. But apparently that's not enough. So following a recent increase in rock-throwing attacks originating from the village of Azun, during which Israeli civilians traveling on the road were injured, it was decided to launch a focused enforcement operation in the village. During the operation, 11 suspects were arrested or detained for questioning on various offenses. They were transferred for further investigation to the Central Border Police Major Crimes Unit and the Judea and Samaria Border Police Investigations Unit. The police also dealt with major traffic violators and some major issues of car theft. The police said the activity is part of an ongoing effort to strengthen governance in the area. Security forces will continue to act decisively to safeguard motorists and reinforce order and governance in the region. So again, a nasty village trying to murder Jews on the road by throwing rocks, and our security forces are cracking down. This is a positive development. Moving forward, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich announced that one of his goals for the next government term is to abolish the Oslo Accords, a move he believes would lead to dismantling of the Palestinian Authority. Speaking at a conference this week, Smotrich said, "I am now presenting to you one of our goals for the next term, the destruction of the idea of an Arab terror state, the cancellation of the cursed Oslo Accords, and moving on to the path of sovereignty." Smotrich suggested the dismantling of the PA in favor of creating a new military administration to govern the area, with the ultimate aim of applying full Israeli sovereignty over the region. Now, folks, how many Jews have been murdered as a result of the Oslo Accords? I'm talking before October the 7th, from 1992 to, let's say, 2023. You're talking about 1,500 maybe 2,000. And why? Because Israel decided to turn over territory to our enemies for false promises of peace. You remember all of the bus bombings, the cafes and pizza parlors blowing up? That's all the result of the misguided Oslo mentality. That mentality went from Oslo to the 2005 expulsion of all Jewish life from Gaza, which eventually led to October the 7th. Without an Israeli presence in Gaza, Hamas had 16 years to build their arsenal, dig all the tunnels, train their fighters, and brainwash future generations. That all happened because Israel did not maintain a presence in Gaza. But let's not forget it all started with the Oslo blunder. So Minister Smotrich is right. Oslo should be canceled once and for all. Most of the world community is still pushing for Oslo, still pushing for a so-called two-state solution. But most people here in Israel now get it. When you show weakness, when you make concessions, Israel pays the price in Jewish blood time and time again. Last week, folks, we discussed how the Israeli cabinet approved lifting confidentiality from land registry records in Judea and Samaria and canceling restrictions on land sales to non-Arabs. In other words, Jews and other non-Arabs can now buy land in Judea and Samaria. And now this week, more positive news. The Israeli cabinet approved the resumption of land registration across Judea and Samaria for the first time since the 1967 Six-Day War. The decision means, among other things, the registration of extensive areas in Judea and Samaria that belong to the state in the name of the state, the ministers who led the charge said. I'm talking about Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Justice Yariv Levin, Minister of Finance and Minister within the Ministry of Defense Bezalel Smotrich, and Minister of Defense Israel Katz. The move will enable a transparent and in-depth clarification of rights, they said, noting that land registration would help end legal disputes and facilitate development of the area and infrastructure. The Regavim movement, an NGO dedicated to the protection of Israel's national lands, applauded the move, explaining to JNS in depth the ramifications of the decision. In practical terms, Naomi Kahn, director of Regavim's international division, said the ruling will result in clear determination of ownership for both Arabs and Jews that will create legally binding property boundaries for individuals and for publicly owned land. Minister Smotrich said, once there is an orderly registration in the land registry, everyone can bring their evidence, and land that is privately owned will be registered in that person's name. Now they're protected 200 years into the future, he said, adding everything will be recorded, everything will be transparent, and this is how it is done in every country. So until now, you have chaos. After the Six-Day War, Israel froze land registration, previously managed by Jordan. They cited unreliable records, and Israel wanted to avoid permanent legal changes in territory it had not formally annexed. Naomi Kahn said that a government decision shows that the mentality in Israel has finally changed in regard to Judea and Samaria based on the current realities. Regavim explained that under the auspices of the vacuum on the part of Israel, the Palestinian Authority began registering illegal land. With the assistance of foreign governments, it registered in the Palestinian Land Registry over 1.3 dunams, or 321,000 acres, this according to Regavim. Regavim explained that under the auspices of the vacuum on the part of Israel, the Palestinian Authority began registering illegal land. With the assistance of foreign governments, it registered in the Palestinian Land Registry over 1.3 million dunams, or 321,000 acres, according to Regavim. What is the bottom line here? It's finally time to figure out what land is private and what land is state land. No more anarchy, no more land grabs. If the land is yours, whether you are a Jew or an Arab, prove it. Private land is private and state land is state. No more of this middle ground. As Naomi Kahn said, full land registration will prevent illegal annexation of public land and bring to a close the decades-long era of endless legal challenges to Jewish homes and communities built in good faith and accordance with the law. And that's why this approval is so important. And on cue, of course, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the Israeli government's decision to resume the land registration procedures in Area C. This according to Guterres' spokesperson, warning that the move could dispossess Palestinians of their property and expand Israeli control over the area. For the UN, Arabs can live in Judea and Jews can't. For the UN, figuring out whose land it really is a bad thing, because if you find out an Arab has been squatting illegally on land that isn't his, he might have to leave. Who cares whose land that is? Who cares what is legal or what is illegal? For the UN, Jews can live in New York or Paris, but Jews can't live in Judea. And they will do anything they can, the UN will, to prevent a Jew from living in Judea. That's what the UN is all about when it comes to Israel. And that's going to do it for today, this week's Judeacation here on JNS TV. My name is Josh Hasten, correspondent for JNS News. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to give a shout out to the people behind the scenes here at JNS TV and the JNS Media Hub. Aaron Wogelanter is busy on the board. Yuri Svretsky, station manager. Our producer, Esther Eden, Ryan Lifshitz, and Zach Sickerman. And make sure you go to JNS TV for all the amazing content. Subscribe, give us a super thanks, and go to jns.org for all the latest breaking news from Israel, the Middle East, and the entire Jewish world. We'll see you next week here on Judeacation on JNS TV.